This Choircast podcast brought to you by Bros, Bibles, and Beer. You know the conversations that you have with the guys? You have the debates, things go sideways, and then you end up laughing so hard it hurts?
Yeah, now imagine those conversations with actually digging into the big questions.
Zach, do you even like the Bible?
I do, Andy. I just am not sure if God wrote it.
That's blasphemy of the
How
Holy
many beers
Spirit.
have you had?
Bros, Bibles, and Beer. Serious conversations on faith and culture without taking ourselves too seriously. New episodes every week.
On this week's episode,
and realize how capable we were of doing really immoral things, and to covenant never to allow something like that happen again. So the next time we were faced with a Pearl Harbor or a 9/11 or propaganda of those people are rapists and drug dealers, that we wouldn't fall for it again.
think you know the Bible? You've never even heard of it until you've heard Pastor Paul's snarky Bible tales.
All right. Hey, everyone. It has been a minute since I have been on, and I'm sorry for that, but life has been lifing for me, and particularly due to working on a master's. And so I've been in finals week for 2 weeks, and it's been crazy. Finals was for real. Forgive me for being out for a bit, but I needed to get through finals. I'm kind of going to start leaning into mid-length YouTube, rather, the shorts on TikTok and Facebook and all are fun, but they take a lot of work, and all of these platforms are now, ode to Trump sites, and they're not letting a lot of my stuff get out there no matter what I do. And that's where my time is going to go. Make sure to follow me on the Evangelical-ish YouTube channel, because that's where I'm going to be dropping a lot of stuff these days. So this blog is called The Ethics of Deportation and War, Decisions That Must Be Made Ahead of Fear and Propaganda. And the story is, with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, we're talking about, hi, Laura, thanks for joining us. We're talking about, is Kilmar a terrorist, a gang member, or father of the year, as the straw man thrown out? It actually doesn't matter at all in the eyes of the law if he's any of those things. And it shouldn't matter in the eyes of an ethical person. Every human being in America legally has a right to due process, and every human being in America, to an ethical person, has the right to be seen as a human being, no matter who they are or what they've done. And I know that is difficult at times. And that's why the decision of ethics and morals have to be made way before we're ever confronted with an ethical quandary or with propaganda to try to drive us to fear that makes us choose self-preservation over the command to love one's to love ourselves over loving our neighbor as ourselves. And here's how this works. I live 5 blocks from a place where America's ethics got lost in a fearful moment, and American citizens were interred at this place 5 blocks from my house. Now, interred is a gentle way of saying America gave them an hour to pack as much as they could in a knapsack, and then we whisked them off to a concentration camp far from their home, complete with armed American soldiers guarding them with fences with barbed wire on it. So that's not interred, that's putting them in a concentration camp, guarded by American soldiers, while many of them had children who were fighting in the American army in World War II. That's how crazy we were at this moment to make this. And I I once spoke about this at a Christian men's group, and don't even get me started on single gender Christian groups. We could go on forever. But I was speaking at this Christian men group and was sharing how horrific and anti-human and anti-Christ this act was. And I said it's important as the American people and theoretically in charge of our own government to really hone in on the lack of moral integrity and the lack of ethics it took in us to allow that to and realize how capable we were of doing really immoral things, and to covenant never to allow something like that happen again. So the next time we were faced with a Pearl Harbor or a 9/11 or propaganda of those people are rapists and drug dealers, that we wouldn't fall for it again. And I noted in that talk that our need to get even with someone of brown skin after 9/11 caused us to attack someone, a people group of brown skin that had nothing to do with 9/11. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Yet there we go. We're told by our Christian administration that they have weapons of mass destruction. And we're like, yeah, let's go get them because somebody's got to pay for 9/11. Even though we knew it was the Saudis behind it. We knew we couldn't attack them. So we had to attack somebody. So weapons of mass destruction, Saddam's a terrible guy. Let's go get him. And the irony of that is that more Americans died in Iraq than died in 9/11. We killed more of our own in Iraq. Somebody had nothing to do with 9/11 because we needed to get even with somebody. Then were killed in 9/11. And we killed as many as most estimates say somewhere around 300,000 innocent Iraqis. I mean, hear that number, 300,000 Iraqis who had nothing to do with 9/11. Dead, gone. And we talk about undocumented people killing Americans. I guarantee you, it's not even in the same stratosphere as 300,000 innocent Iraqis. I would dare say it's probably in the dozens, if not less. It's a made-up issue. So after I made this talk at this men's group, one of our elder statesmen of the local evangelical community came up and congratulated me on a great speech. And look out whenever a boomer evangelical congratulates you on something, because you're in for it. And he told me, you understand, young man, after Pearl Harbor, we were afraid and we needed to do something. And God would want us to protect our family and our homeland. And as I continued chatting with this man, I realized that he could not fathom the concept that a person that looked Japanese and was of Japanese heritage could truly be American and have a stake in America as their homeland. He felt it was a gift of white men like him to allow those people to live in America. I kept reminding him, those we put in those prison camps were American citizens. They were his family by every definition of the love your neighbor as yourself commandment. And it could not compute in his brain or in his soul. They were foreigners to him no matter what, because they weren't of white Euro background, despite the fact that his family came from somewhere else as well. But just he had no place for it. He was so indoctrinated in the idea that white Euro men owned the land of North American America. And I look back at that moment and I see the deep roots of Christian nationalism, Trumpism, self-preservation of the white race had so overcame the biblical commands of seeking justice for the poor, the foreigner, the outcast, the marginalized, the widow / economically disadvantaged, that all was in place long before Donald Trump came down the golden escalator. I mean, so approve of a Muslim travel ban? Of course, American Christians would do that because they're not us. They have the wrong skin color. They have the wrong race, right? That they have the wrong religion. And for this white American man, that includes Hindus and Sikhs. They're all the same thing, right? Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, he had no ability. He was too lazy or didn't care enough to know that Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims were not all the same thing. All he knew, they were non-American religions and non-American people, and that's all that mattered. Laughing along with Trump and his administration as they hung out with this vicious dictator from El Salvador and laughed about obfuscating the reason Kilmar was never coming back from El Salvador. Of course, American Christians would laugh along with that. He's an MS-13. It's a given, right? And we're putting one over on the liberals. We're owning the libs with this. Of course, we'll laugh about that at the coffee clatch on Sunday while we're getting ready for our next indoctrination teaching at the American Christian Church. But let me try this. And thank you guys for the nice comments coming in. Yeah, keep sharing and share this with others. Make sure you follow and hit that notification bell on the Evangelicalish YouTube channel, because I want to try to do this 3 times a week. Let's imagine how these ethics have to be determined and how the fact that Christianity doesn't have them are demonstrated in the Hebrew tale of Jonah. Now, most people like to focus on the idea of the big fish swallowing a man and that part of the story. And so they miss what the true message of the story is and what the story is trying to encourage readers to grasp. Like most American Christians, Jonah was a religious, racial nationalist. The Ninevites were a people group with which his people had been warring for a long time. And Jonah felt justified to believe that his people deserved to want bad things to happen to the Ninevites. Jonah's people had experienced violence from the Ninevites for a long time. And so he believed he had every right to hate them and to want God to punish them so that his country could be made great again. So when God, in the story of Jonah, asked Jonah to go preach to the Ninevites, he said, I'm not going to go preach to people who are of a different skin color, who are of a different religion to me that I've been told are bad people. I want to hate them, God, and I want you to hate them too. And so Jonah went in the absolute opposite direction. Just like American Christians want God to punish illegals through our guy, Donald Trump, Jonah was like, I don't want these people to be saved. And I know for a fact, if I go to Nineveh, it's because God loves these people, and I don't want God to love these people. They don't deserve to be loved because they're not of my superior race, my superior religion, my superior nationality. Jonah was a Christian nationalist before there was such a thing as Christianity or a Christian nationalist, but he was a MAGA. He was a Make Israel Great Again guy. So he went in the opposite direction, and that's where the big fish comes in the tail and grabs him and takes him back in the right direction. And sure enough, Jonah was right. God had mercy on those people, and Jonah was pissed that God liked people that he didn't like. Jonah was a religious nationalist who hated people that weren't like him, that weren't of the same race, that weren't of the same nationality, that weren't of the same religion. And he wanted God to blow up these people that he didn't like. And so he said, come on, God, why don't you just kill them? They don't deserve mercy, the same mercy that Jonah had received himself. And he put this huge punctuation mark on the end of it. He said, I don't want to even be alive in a country, God, where you would have mercy on those people because they've injured people that I know. Just like American Christians today are like, our country's not great if we let these people, those people, come into our country. I'll show you in just a bit Chris Murphy, Democratic senator, who told why we have asylum laws in the United States. And the reason is because we once disallowed Jewish people from Germany to come into the country because we're like, we don't really like those people. And so we turned them away and they all went back to Germany to their destruction. And we said, never, ever, ever again will we tell people no until they get a chance to prove they deserve asylum.
There are a lot of demands on your money these days. Trump tariffs, the damn egg prices, and wait, is that another Amazon order on my bank statement? But we ask you to consider, is it worth supporting Paul and Ashley and Evangelicalish as they talk about the spiritual journey of those of us in a post-evangelical 21st century spiritual world? Support can be for as little as $5.99 per month. Think about it. Where else do you get a brilliant and beautiful former mayor and an ex-pastor on an exciting gender journey? On Evangelicalish, nothing is off limits, and love leads the way. At times, our truth can get messy, but we're not afraid of the mess, because that's where the healing begins. That's why we're living and loving through trauma, deconstruction, and mental health challenges, and you're invited. Support the pod for just $5.99 per month. Your subscription helps cover the cost of keeping honest conversations going, and it shows us our work is not just a voice in the wind. Visit evangelicalish.com to subscribe, and let's keep this messy love journey going.
And so Jonah says to God, I would rather be dead than live in a world where you have mercy for people that I don't like, mercy for people that are of a different race, a different religion, and a different nationality than me. I want you to destroy my enemies and make my country great again. And you know what God says to Jonah in Jonah chapter 4? God says, do you do well to feel this way? A rhetorical question that is the ancient equivalent of, how's that working out for you, Jonah? What do you think? You think that's the way you should feel? And Jonah is like, yes, this is exactly the way I should feel. You should blow those people up. They don't deserve to live because they're stopping us from making Israel great again. And if Israel isn't great, your favorite country on earth, then God's plan cannot be existent on earth. Just like American Christians would say today, God's plan can't exist on earth if American Christianity isn't in charge of America to make America great again. It's the most hypocritical, screwed up view of the divine spirit of heaven and love of the world and love of humanity that you can have. And it's just massive indoctrination being in place. And so then in this story of Jonah, we see this idea that like this plant miraculously grows and Jonah sits under it because it gives him shade. And so he's sitting under the shade and he's like praying, like still maybe God's going to kill these people of another race, another religion, and another nationality that I don't like so that he can make Israel great again. And he's just hoping against hope. And instead, very funny part of the story, God brings a worm that kills the plant. And so Jonah no longer has shade. And Jonah is pissed. He's like, God, I want you to kill these people, not my plant. And he's just spitting mad at God. And God comes to him again and says, how's that working out for you? You want me to save this plant and you're pissed at me for killing it when you had nothing to do with creating the plant. But you want me to kill these 120,000 people and their livestock. In essence, he says, you want me to kill these 120,000 people and wipe out their livelihood when I created them. How is that being anything godly in any way whatsoever? And I think every Christian in America should have to read Jonah chapter 4 and read it as themselves as Jonah and let them hear God say to them, how's it working out for you to hate those illegals so that they can be mistreated, so that you can have more comfort you believe in, when you had nothing to do with creating any of it, and you want me to destroy these people? Perhaps we need a little bit of introspection again to ask, are we religious nationalists like Jonah, saying we'd rather be dead than live in a world where people of a different race, a different religion, and a different nationality get mercy from something divine or from us? Sorry, phone call came in. Let me turn that off. I'd rather be dead than they have something good happen in their lives, because the only persons that deserve mercy from heaven are us. It's a really dark-hearted belief system. So when we say, yeah, he's MS-13, he doesn't deserve due process, what we're saying is, I don't want to live in a world where somebody that I think is illegal, and by the way, no human being is ever illegal, period. Then you're saying, I don't want to live in a world where everybody deserves the same mercy and the same rights as me, and those who look like me and think like me and believe like me and are from the same nation as me. And divine love from heaven is saying, how's that working out for you? Do you do well to feel this way? And that's why we have to make a covenant to say, never again will we put American citizens into prison camps because we're afraid of the Japanese. Never again will we go get retribution for 9/11 of people that had nothing to do with 9/11 just because we can, and we're the biggest bully on the block, and we kill more of our own citizens than died in 9/11, and we kill 300,000 innocent Middle Eastern Iraqi people just because we're afraid. And we feel like we have to show people how tough we are after we've been brought to our knees by airplanes flying into buildings. We have to make those decisions now and covenant that no amount of propaganda, no amount of a con man being in the White House, no amount of fear will make us again say we will be manipulated into doing something that's wrong, like sending people who may or may not be innocent. I don't even freaking know. And I honestly don't care if they're innocent or not. I want them to be able to be taken in front of a judge and have the federal government prove that they're wrong, that they're not innocent. And if they're not innocent, then we put them in jail. We do what the law says we do with them. I'm not saying set everybody free. I'm saying freaking, I don't trust the federal government ever, and particularly a Trump administration who's working on manipulative fear to be able to say, we get to do this without the process that's set up by the Constitution. And I don't trust an American people who have given up their ethical and moral integrity. And you can argue Biden, Trump, like I see people doing in the comments. I don't care who is in charge of the government. The government never gets to say, we're putting a person in prison because they're this, that, or the other thing without going through the legal process. And today, American MAGA Christians need to hear, do you do well to feel this way when you are in fact just another religious, racist, religious nationalist like Jonah? With God saying, do you do well to feel this way? Ethics and morals, they've got to be chosen way ahead of time, or else you get easily manipulated by propaganda and fear. All right, boys and girls, we can talk a little bit. And I can answer some questions.
If Jesus were in America today, what would he say about the right-wing evangelical church? Pastor Paul's new novel, Religious Right, Religiously Wrong, a modern-day parable, answers this question in a riveting story of a mysterious miracle-working stranger who upsets a conservative, evangelical town with his critique of their political views. Will the pastor and people of the local megachurch listen? Or will the church crucify the messenger all over again? Religious Right, Religiously Wrong is the story America needs right now. James Fallows, writer for The Atlantic and former speechwriter for President Jimmy Carter, says Paul's book is very much worth reading and could not be more timely. Wayne Jacobson, co-author of the mega bestseller, The Shack, says this novel will confront fears and challenge the reader to a more excellent way of living and loving. Religious Right, Religiously Wrong, a modern-day parable, is available on Amazon or at our website, evangelicalish.com.
Doug Ragsdale says, the governor of Indiana says interracial marriage was a mistake. Holy shit. These are crazy people we're dealing with. No doubt about it. I want to play something for you. It is, I got this from iHip News, and it's a clip of Chris Murphy, senator, at the hearing with Kristi Noem. You'll love this, Douglas. You'll love this. Kristi Noem, our wonderful head of Homeland Security. I think she may have but whatever office of the cabinet is over Homeland Security. And she's been getting grilled and like giving bullshit answers to everything that's come in. And so Chris Murphy finally has had enough, and he just tells it like it is. You won't be able to see this on TikTok, but you'll be able to hear it. So this is Senator Chris Murphy in a committee hearing talking to Kristi Noem, the former governor, totally unqualified to be in her position on the cabinet, and getting absolutely slapped by Democratic Senator Chris Murphy. Here we go.
With seriousness and respect, but your department is out of control. You are spending like you don't have a budget. You're on the verge of running out of money for the fiscal year. You are illegally refusing to spend funds that have been authorized by this Congress and appropriated by this committee. You are ignoring the immigration laws of this nation, implementing a brand new immigration system that you have invented that has little relation to the statutes that you are required, that you are commanded to follow, as spelled out in your oath of office. You are routinely violating the rights of immigrants who may not be citizens, but whether you like it or not, they have constitutional and statutory rights when they reside in the United States. Your agency acts as if laws don't matter, as if the election gave you some mandate to violate the Constitution and the laws passed by this Congress. It did not give you that mandate. You act as if your disagreement with the law, or even the public's disagreement with the law, is relevant and gives you the ability to create your own law. It does not give you that ability.
God, that's such a great point. Sorry to interrupt, but that is such a great point. It doesn't matter if you won by the biggest margin in history or the smallest. You still don't have any kind of mandate to violate the law. It doesn't matter if your issue is the most popular or the least popular. You still have to follow the law, the fucking law. Period. I just love that. It doesn't matter if people are clamoring for us to mistreat anyone. John Adams, who ended up being the second president of the United States, defended British soldiers who killed a bunch of revolutionaries before the Revolutionary War. It made people very angry at him. But he said, I still want to live in a land of laws because laws matter. And MAGA people say laws matter and the Constitution matters until it comes up against something they want to happen. The hypocrisy of this is so crazy because the truth is Kristi Noem doesn't give a shit about laws. She just wants power. And power, she knows, is attaching her wagon to this terrible person in the White House. And so Chris Murphy is laying this out so well.
Let's start with your spending. You are on track to trigger the Anti-Deficiency Act. That means you are going to spend more money than you have been allocated by Congress. This is a rare occurrence, and it is wildly illegal. Your agency will be broke by July, over 2 months before the end of the fiscal year. You may not think that Congress has provided enough money to ICE, but the Constitution and the federal law does not allow you to spend more money than you have been given or to invent money. And this obsession with spending at the border, as the chairwoman mentioned, has left the country unprotected elsewhere. The security threats to the United States are higher, not lower, than when Trump came to office.
Listen to that. Security threats to America are higher now with Trump in office than they were before Trump came into office. He'll continue and explain.
On the border, you have illegally gutted spending for cybersecurity. As we speak, Russian and Chinese hackers are having a field day attacking our nation. You've withdrawn funds for disaster prevention. Storms are going to kill more people in this country because of your illegal withholding of these funds. Your myopia about the border, fueled by President Trump's prejudice against people who speak a different language, has shattered many of this country's most important defenses.
A different language, i.e., like Jonah, a different race, skin color, religion, nationality.
I acknowledge that you don't believe that people should be able to apply for asylum, but you don't get to choose that. The White House doesn't get to choose that. The law requires you to process people who are showing up at the border and who claim asylum. Why? Because our asylum law is
Okay, listen to this. Why do we have an asylum law? MAGA people on TikTok, MAGA people on YouTube, MAGA people on Facebook, MAGA people on Instagram. Listen to this. Why do we have an asylum laws? MAGA people who are claiming your support of Trump's hatred of colleges is because of anti-Semitism. Listen to this. Why do we have asylum laws?
Bipartisan commitment, an effort to correct for our nation's unconscionable decision to deny entry to Jews to this country who were being hunted and killed by the Nazis. Our nation, Republicans and Democrats, wrote it into law that we would not repeat that horror ever again. And thus we would allow for people who were fleeing terror and torture to come here, arrive at the border, and make a case for asylum.
Okay, I play this.
Okay. So we bring asylum seekers to America and allow them to make a case for asylum because we fucked it up at the end of World War II. And Donald Trump wants to have big celebrations for how we won World War II. But we never acknowledge, because we don't fucking ever teach real history anymore, that we had a big chunk of America that wanted to be on the side of Germany and believed Hitler was right and that democracy wasn't working and we needed fascism to really make it all work. And when a bunch of Jewish people showed up at our beaches and said, hey, Hitler wants to kill us all. There was enough anti-Semitism in America. Charles Lindbergh, Henry Ford, very wealthy people who thought they're the problem, that we sent this group of Jewish people back to Germany to their death. And a bipartisan, almost unanimous movement said, we will never do that again. We will never send people back to be destroyed by the evils of racism and fascism and authoritarianism in their own country. Any asylum seeker that shows up to our borders, we will give them a fucking chance to tell their story, and then we'll decide, do they get to stay or not? Because that's how we all showed up here, except for the people who have the most right to the land here, and that's the people who lived here when we showed up and were the most generous to their own demise of allowing us to be asylum seekers in the land. And I am so done with white Christian people saying they didn't show up here with due process, they don't deserve due process. I say, fuck you to that. And I don't care if TikTok does ban me from Alive for that. Fuck off. To say that, you have to be so dark-hearted and so ignorant of history that you don't deserve my respect for having said that. Don on Facebook says, for those of us that work in law, you cannot believe how offensive all this bullshit is to us. 30 years in this profession, and now they want me to believe everything I've ever learned, everything I've ever done in this career is a lie. The law works if you work it. It can't help that it's slow. It's a good point, Don. It's actually made to work slowly so we don't screw it up. But it does work if you work it. Well, Trump's too lazy and dumb to work anything, right? It does work, and it does come to the conclusion it's supposed to. The law never fails when it's practiced properly. Yeah, unfortunately, we have a lot of racial bias mixed in with it sometimes. But today I learned that they want us now to get rid of habeas corpus. Holy shit. Doug says, and we're not even bringing up that the Nazis came here to study bigoted laws and how to implement them. Good point. Doug says, righteous anger there, Paul. Tip the hat to that. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Nana Weezer, for the gift on TikTok. Love it. Yeah, I am really done with the whole MAGA thing. And everybody like, oh, we have to build bridges. We have to have discussion. I don't see how you can have discussion with someone who refuses to do the work to learn why we have asylum laws. Why is due process important? Like, saying it's okay for the federal government not to use due process is putting you in danger. I'm not fighting for the rights of just undocumented people in America, even though I am, and they deserve them. I'm fighting for my rights. I'm fighting for my children's rights, because if due process and habeas corpus go away, they're not fucking coming back in my lifetime or my children's lifetime. If freedom of speech, freedom of the press go away, they're not coming back. These are hard-won rights that dumb, lazy leaders hate because it makes them work to implement bad practices. And so, of course, Trump hates them because he's not smart. He doesn't know how to work through a system. All he knows how to do is bully people with threats of lawsuits and stupid arguments. And so, of course, he hates freedom of the press. Of course, he hates court systems and having to work through process. Of course, he hates the process by which laws are passed, because they all cause him to have to work, and he doesn't want to work. His daddy taught him you just lie and double down on your lies. And when you're caught in the dumbest of dumb lies, you double down on the dumbest of dumb lies with even dumber dumb lies. And when you have millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, you get away with it. And Trump is laughing all the way to the bank, making billions off of meme coins by being president. His kids making billions using their influence as daddy being president all over. And he's just laughing about it all. And he said, I'll make everybody rich and happy. And now he's saying, instead of $30, you get $2, and those $2 are going to cost more. And the same people who are like, yeah, Biden made it expensive and Trump's going to fix it, are now like, no, this is how you fix things, by making it more expensive. And you just go, good God, people, when did you become this gullible? And I used to talk to people from around the world, and they would say, Americans are so stupid. And I'm like, no, we're not. And now I can only say, you're right. We are so myopic. I saw somebody the other day, like, if you're in America, speak English. And I'm like, you're proud of the fact that we so devalue thinking and learning and growing that we don't learn second languages or value our children learning Spanish or Chinese so that we can be active in communicating with the rest of the world. You think that makes us smart and cool and powerful? No wonder the Chinese are saying, dude, we know how to suffer. You don't know how to suffer. And they're 100% right. If we want to go a long-term trade war with China, we'll screw up. Eyes Wide Open says you can move to China any day. See, this is what, again, like, people who can't really sit and register thoughts are, America, love it or leave it, rather than America, love it, ask it to be better. Like, true love of something is saying, I want it to be the best it can be. Thoughtless people who are deep into propaganda and indoctrination are like, you have to love this or else you have to get out. Don't ever ask me to be better or to think or be introspective or like really learn our history so we don't do the same dumb, ignorant things over and over and over. You get out so we could keep doing the same dumb, ignorant things over and over and over. Hi, Doa dear. Love you too. Doug on the left says, China is looking mighty appealing these days, unironically. I don't want to go to China. That's my point. But Trump is too dumb to know what a trade deficit is and why we have a trade deficit with China. And it's because we like cheap products. It's why, like, a dumbass like what's his name, Kevin, what's Kevin, the bald guy from Shark Tank, who now is like a huge Trumpite. But for 10 years while I was having my kids watch Shark Tank, he was always like, oh, you got to take that production to China because Americans want cheap products. And so we bought our products from production in China because American companies took their production to China because rich people wanted to make more money and Americans refused to pay more for products. That's why. Not because China was ripping us off, because Donald's too dumb to understand what tariffs really mean and what Kevin O'Leary, that's right, Doug, thank you, on YouTube. Like, Donald Trump believes if I go to Starbucks and buy a coffee, I now have a trade deficit with Starbucks. And Starbucks needs to buy an unconventional Pastor Paul subscription at pastor-paul.com, or else I'm getting ripped off by Starbucks. I mean, that's how fucking stupid this guy is. No thought of like, no, wait, I got a product in exchange for the money I gave. I mean, it's so ignorant. And you know what's hilarious is I was watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off, one of the greatest movies ever made. I love that movie so much. I could watch it 100 times. And Ben Stein is on there. You remember Ben Stein being on Ferris Bueller's Day Off? You know, Bueller. You know, and Ben Stein's teaching the class, and he starts talking about America in the Depression, and we decided to bring tariffs through a bill. Does anybody know the name of the bill? The something Hawley tariff bill. Anyone? The Smoot-Hawley tariff bill to get us out of the Depression and give more money to the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Yes, no. Did it work? No, it didn't work. And America sank deeper into the Depression. And I was just like, oh, why couldn't Trump have watched this movie instead of Escape from Alcatraz? And he could have come out saying, oh, I'm brilliant. I've decided that because of the Smoot-Hawley tariff fiasco, we're going to take off all the tariffs, instead of coming out and saying, we're going to open Alcatraz. You know, we toured Alcatraz with our children once, you know, and we came out and like, Dad, why don't they open Alcatraz again? And same, you know, Trump watches Escape from Alcatraz. He's like, we're going to reopen Alcatraz. I mean, he's just a little child is all he is. Just a little child. And he's got to reopen Alcatraz. Don says Ferris is great. Ben Stein was talking about tariffs. Yes, he was. Alex says Alex from Australia. She says the rest of the world sees it with alarm. Canada and Australia have rejected our Trump imitating PM candidates, and it seems the election of the new Pope Leo is also making a strategic point. Love it. Jack's mom says, thank you. I was hoping someone would bring this to the table. Anna says yes. So guys, don't forget, share these lives. Subscribe on YouTube to the Evangelicalish Pastor Paul channel, because we just want to grow this thing. And I used to be doing really well on Facebook. Then Zuckerberg flew to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring. TikTok is trying to survive, so they're screwing my channel. It seems YouTube is the only place I have a chance to survive. So please help. I want to show another video, and this is I don't know what to say. To watch Fox, you definitely have to put your brain in your back pocket, and just soak it in. It's hard for me to believe people watch this thing sometimes. But so here's Elon Musk having a discussion with Jesse Waters. And I don't like to give Jesse Waters pub, because you talk about a douchebag. This guy, like, if you look up douchebag in the dictionary, this is the guy. His picture will be there. But this is Elon Musk talking about why the federal government needs to keep giving him hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for SpaceX, because he is going to save the world, and he's going to explain what he's saving the world from through SpaceX. And to a thinking person, a normal person, it's the answer is going to stun you. To a right-wing person, you're going to be like, yeah, that Elon is brilliant, as Jesse Waters does. Here, and again, TikTok, you're not going to be able to see it, but you'll hear it, and everybody else, you're going to be able to see. Elon saves the world. Okay, let me hit share here, and here we go.
Why are we going to Mars? Well, we're definitely, this is a change of subject, but it's not about going to Mars to visit once, but it is to make life multiplanetary, so that we can expand the scope and scale of consciousness to better understand the nature of the universe and to ensure the long-term survival of civilization in the hopefully unlikely event that something terrible happens to Earth, that there is a continuance of consciousness on.
Okay, so Elon Muskie, who has been saving hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars without ever cutting anything that has anything to do with any of his government contracts that have made him a multi-billionaire, hundreds of billions of heir, needs money from the government to go to Mars in case the unlikely thing happens that Earth is no longer inhabitable. So he's going to now tell us what could happen to make Earth uninhabitable. Listen to this.
On Mars.
This is a backup plan in case something bad happens here, going to Mars.
That's one of the benefits of Mars, is life insurance for life collectively. So eventually, all life on Earth will be destroyed by the sun. The sun is gradually expanding.
Okay. Life on Earth is going to be destroyed by the sun. This is why we need to get to work now to go to Mars. Keep listening.
And so we do, at some point, need to be a multi-planet civilization because Earth will be incinerated.
I'm hearing this for the first time. No one's ever told me the sun is going to burn
This is not a
Earth.
disputed fact.
Okay, Jesse Waters is hearing this for the first time because apparently he never took science in grade school or junior high or high school or college. So Jesse Waters, I guess that makes him the perfect Fox host because he's never taken science and has ever learned that one day the sun, like all stars, will burn up and collapse and no life will be able to exist without it. That no life on Earth can exist without the sun, and the sun's going to burn up everything around it as it goes. And by everything, it means the solar system and close by solar systems and other things. But okay, I'll stop interrupting. I'll try at least.
I'm not disagreeing with it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I didn't know this was our destiny, to get roasted by the sun.
Yes, and I don't think there's anyone who would disagree with that.
So we have to set up plans to leave and spread out.
So Elon just said, I don't think there's anyone around who would disagree with that, except hundreds of thousands of Fox listeners who are certain there's no such thing as climate change. There's no such thing as an old Earth, and that Jesus is going to come and take us all out of here before any of this happens.
I mean, we have several 100 million years, so it's not like you don't hold your breath. It'll be okay. But if Earth has been around for 4.5 billion years, which is what the fossil record suggests, then Earth only has about 10% more life in it before it gets so hot that life is impossible.
And you're going to be the guy to put us close.
Okay. So Elon says we have several 100 million years. So he needs a lot of money from the federal government to get us to Mars. And he says the Earth is billions of years old, which I know a huge portion of the Fox viewing audience completely disagrees with because they believe the Earth is only 6,000 years old. And Jesse stops and moves to something different because he knows a subject has just been breached that the Fox News audience completely disagrees with. But Elon has got to get money from the federal government to save us from something that's going to happen several 100 million years from now to get us to Mars. But he is totally against doing anything that would save our planet from climate change, because that won't go into his pocket. Got it. Now, let me ask you to think about, and we'll get to it in a minute. If Earth is destroyed by a burned out sun, why is going to Mars to survive it problematic? Think about it.
Closer to where we need to be to get to Mars.
We're headed there, yeah. We have a long way to go because it's not about just landing on Mars and doing flags and footprints. It's about creating a self-sustaining city on Mars. With the fundamental fork in the road of destiny being that Mars is sufficiently self-sustaining and can grow by itself. If the resupply ships from Earth stop coming for any reason, whether that is because civilization died with a bang or a whimper, but if the resupply ships are necessary for Mars to survive, then we have not created life insurance. We've not created life insurance for life collectively. So that's the key point in the future, where destiny of life as we know it will forever be affected.
Okay. I mean, there's just so many things in that video. I don't. So first off, yes, we can't live on Mars and have a supply chain from the Earth if the Earth doesn't exist. But if the sun blows up and kills all life on Earth, Mars is going to be destroyed too. Now, maybe Elon is talking about going to Mars so we can then learn to go to Jupiter, so we can then learn to go to Uranus, so then, and beyond. But I have a better idea. Why don't we try to make life sustainable on Earth as long as we can? And realize that we're part of the process of life in the universe. Yeah, as Doug is saying on Doug on the left is saying on YouTube, Elon said he was going to end world hunger. And he was given a number and he didn't end world hunger. He wanted to kill the bullet train that we're trying to build out here in the United States. The United States being the only wealthy, civilized country in the world that doesn't have high-speed rail. And he said he was going to build these hydro, I don't know, I can't remember what they were called. Hydro, like if you're old enough like me to remember when you went to the bank and they would put the little thing in the chute and it would shoot it up. He was going to put people into those and travel us around the country in those little air hydroponic things or whatever they're called. Hyperloop, is that it, Doug? Yeah. And so, Republicans who were the originators and were for high-speed rail in California when Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor of our state, immediately turned against it for some reason when Barack Obama became president and he put stimulus funds toward it. We don't know why. They just, and one of our local congressmen told my spouse, I don't want the effing Obama train going through my district. Huh, interesting. He said a lot of things that he's never done, but he's been given a lot of money for them. He said he had a 100% autonomous car, and it took governments around the world to say, you don't have a fully autonomous car, you lying bastard. I think I just heard Canada has banned Teslas now or something. They're not going to allow them to be sold anymore. Packs under construction. It says hydraulics. I think Hyperloop is right. I think Doug is right on that one, but thank you for that suggestion. And Pax also says he's the villain archetype, and I think he loves it. I think he's just a psychopathical money grubber. You know, Guy says, yep, they've banned Teslas in Canada. I love it. I love it. My daughter sang the national anthem at her graduation. We were just in New Jersey. And by the way, New Jerseyans, I don't know about Southern New Jersey. I know Southern Jersey is like a very different place than Northern New Jersey, but Northern New Jersey is way underrated. You know, you always hear jokes about it from New Yorkers. But I love Northern New Jersey. Man, what a beautiful place. What a beautiful place. Yeah, Alex says there's a bit of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged reflected there too in Elon. The elites go off to create their own utopia. Hey, what RFK Jr. said about autistic people the other day, that is a complete eugenicist view of the world, that somebody who is autistic, somebody who's trans, they don't deserve life as much as we normal people do. We need to get rid of those, the things that make those people not have livable, legitimate lives. It's a complete eugenicist view of the world, that if you're not a big steroid eater like RFK with big muscles that can cut the head off a whale and put it on top of a car, you're not as worthy of life as a bunch of other people. Doug says Canada hasn't banned Tesla. They've just banned them from tax rebate. Well, they totally scammed the Canadian tax rebate system. I mean, that's how Tesla has made a huge amount of their money, is by gaming carbon unit systems and compiling carbon units and selling them to polluters. I mean, these guys are all scam artists, man. It's incredible. Like Trump's meme coin is just a shady way for people to legally bribe the American president. It's incredible. By the way, I just love White P, which I believe stands for white supremacist. He's saying your 5 o'clock shadow is creeping in, ma'am. So many adult males are just little children in big meat sacks, and they can't handle, they're enslaved to societal and religious pressure, and they get so angry when anybody else is not enslaved to the same system that they're enslaved to. And so they have to make like little playground jokes about it. Before I get finished with Elon and finished with this whole live, I have one more video I want to show. And there are few people that make me throw up in my mouth more in the world than Steve Bannon. But sometimes out of the mouths of sicko, wacko people, truth comes. And I just, I am completely baffled by the inability of red hat wearers to be able to look at what Doge is doing and say, I don't need anybody to really sift through the lies and say, oh, they're not finding any waste, fraud, and abuse. If they were, Pam Bondi, or as Laura Loomer, I found out, calls her Pam Blondie, which I love when families are fighting internally. Love it. Laura Loomer is going to try to get Pam Blondie fired. By the way, Pam Blondie, one of the people who let Epstein go when he was found to have done really bad things to children in Palm Beach, Florida. And her boss at that time, I can't remember his name, but he was in the first Trump administration, which shows how tight Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were. If you're wondering why the Epstein files have not been released yet, Just look at how tight Epstein and Trump and people around Trump were. There's a reason when Ghislaine Maxwell, the pimp for Jeffrey Epstein, went to her trial and Trump said, "Oh, I wish her well. She's a very nice person." There's a reason Trump said that. And part of it is her dad is a very shady character that perhaps was in the spy rings of Israel, if not very closely aligned with them. And if you said bad things about his daughter, you could end up with some cement galoshes. There's a reason those Epstein files. If you ever see the video of them asking, "Hey, Trump, are you going, if you're president again, are you going to release the JFK files?" Yes. Are you going to release the 9/11 files? Yes. Are you going to release the Jeffrey Epstein files? Yes. But the Epstein files, we're going to have to redact some because, those, there's some good people in there who the deep state has, unbelievable. And MAGA people just buy all of that shit because we've just given up our right to think. But Steve Bannon telling people why Doge is the biggest scam you've ever heard or seen. And it pains me to have to go to Steve Bannon for truth, but maybe this will help some of you gullible Magites and red hatters hear some truth.
So the day of reckoning's here, folks. The simple math is, unless you raise the taxes at the upper bracket, the math doesn't work. The math ain't that great with doing that, but that's kind of a starter. And so anybody wants to show me come back with some math, and what they're going to say is like what Elon said was going to be a 5% growth rate. Well, Elon said a lot of stuff, then none of it's turned out to be accurate. Like, where's my 2 trillion cuts? Where's my 1 trillion cuts? Where's my 150 billion in cuts? Just show me any cut. That's not programmatic, because the programmatic were being done by other people. Show me waste, fraud, and abuse. You've been over the Pentagon for 2 months, bro. That's a viper's nest of, wait for it, hang on, wait, waste, fraud, and abuse. I got nothing. You're going to have to cut the defense budget. All these fantasies. People run around and get fantasies. They're fantasizing now. The global bond market gets a vote here. Don't forget the equity market, right? That's just lowering the cost of equity.
All right. We don't need to,
All right. And those are my friends from the Majority Report there, but Steve Bannon is the one telling people the truth. Thanks to Adir for showing up. Yeah, I'm going to wrap it up here, but that Doge is a big old fat fucking lie. They found almost no waste, fraud, and abuse when you put it in the context of the entire federal budget. And then now that Trump is saying we're going to have a $1 trillion military budget, nobody has raised the deficit like Donald Trump did in his first term. And he's going to do it even more now. So my advice to red hat Christians, actually read the Bible and read it with an open heart and open mind. Be introspective. And when you read like a story like Jonah, don't be afraid to read it and ask yourself, am I like Jonah? Would the God of that story, that divine spirit, say to me, do you do well to think this way about people of a different race, a different skin color, a different religion, a different nationality than you? Because you've been indoctrinated to believe that being white Euro-cultured American is to be in the most godly space possible. And that everybody else is fortunate to get to ride along with you. And because of that, every time America decides we're going to bully somebody and kick the shit out of them and throw them out of the country without due process, you think, oh, well, of course God would want us to do that. But the Bible, and when I say the Bible, in this instance, I'm talking about actually the Hebrew Torah and the Hebrew Tanakh that we've colonized to call the Old Testament, doesn't say that at all. In fact, the command to seek justice for the poor, the foreigner, the marginalized, the widow / economic disadvantaged is in the Bible about 2,000 times. The number of times to ban abortion is in the Bible this many times. 0. The number of times to marginalize queer people is in the Bible this many times. The number of times to oppose gay marriage is in the Bible this many times. You've been manipulated for political purposes. And the divine spirit of heaven is saying, how's that working out for you? You've been manipulated by evil people. Jerry Falwell Sr., Francis Schaeffer, James Dobson, Pat Robertson. These were evil men with evil intentions. And Frank Schaeffer, who was in the room, will tell you today, they knew they were evil people with evil intentions. Paul Weyrich, the mastermind of the moral majority, was an evil man who wanted to get rid of democracy, didn't want people to have say in their governance so that Christianity could be put in charge of the government. And not Christianity, but a very specific type of Christianity that then would take charge and punish anybody not a part of that particular type of politically prostituted Christianity. And we're seeing it in action today. Project 2025 was a long game, finally written up, but this has been a multiple decade process of putting a specific small majority of Christianity in charge of the country. And I know there's a lot of Catholic Christians and a lot of Mormon Christians who are right now on board with all of this because it sounds kind of like theirs. But at some point, this evangelical Christian nationalist belief system will start to say, no, no, Mormons, you're not a part of this. No, no, Catholics, you're not a part of this. No, no. And I beseech you, look into the mirror and say, is it good to be feeling this way, just as the divine spirit said to Jonah? Do you do well to feel this way?
Think you know the Bible? You've never even heard of it until you've heard Pastor Paul's snarky Bible tales.